The millionaire CEO watched her from afar, until one night he could no longer hide his desire. She never noticed how he looked at her during meetings, but everyone else did. The morning light filtered through the glass walls of the 32nd floor, casting long shadows across the conference room, where 12 people sat around a polished mahogany table. Amara Lewis adjusted her navy blazer and opened her laptop, her fingers moving with practiced precision across the keyboard. She had prepared for this presentation for weeks, and today felt different, electric somehow. At the head of the table sat Elias Morgan, CEO of Meridian Digital Solutions, his steel-grey eyes scanning documents with the intensity of a man who had built his empire from nothing. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his charcoal suit impeccable, and his expression unreadable. To everyone in that room he was untouchable, a figure carved from ambition and success. But as Amara began her presentation about the new campaign strategy for their biggest client, something shifted in the air. "The emotional connection we're building isn't just about brand recognition," Amara explained, her voice steady despite the dozen pairs of eyes on her. "It's about creating moments that feel personal, authentic. When someone sees this ad, they shouldn't think about buying a product. They should think about how it fits into their story." She clicked to the next slide, and in that brief moment when her eyes swept the room, she caught something that made her pause for just a heartbeat. Elias wasn't looking at the screen. He was looking at her, not the way a boss observes an employee's performance, not even the way a man notices an attractive woman. It was something deeper, as if he was memorizing the way she moved, the cadence of her voice, the small gesture she made when she tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear. The moment lasted perhaps 3 seconds before his gaze returned to his notepad, but it was long enough for Amara to feel her pulse quicken. "These metrics show a 47% increase in engagement," she continued, forcing herself to focus on the numbers dancing across the projection screen. "Our target demographic is responding to the authenticity factor we've integrated." "Impressive work, Lewis," came a voice from across the table. Janet Webb, the VP of Client Relations, nodded approvingly. The Chicago test market exceeded expectations. Amara allowed herself a small smile. Moving from Houston to Chicago 8 months ago had been the right decision. Even when her mother had cried and her best friend had called her crazy for leaving everything familiar behind. This job, this city, this life she was building, it all felt worth it in moments like these. "Any questions?" Amara asked, closing her laptop. "Just one." Elias spoke for the first time since the meeting began, his voice carrying that familiar authority that made everyone in the room straighten unconsciously. "The emotional messaging you mentioned, how do you measure something so subjective?" His question was professional, logical, but when Amara met his eyes to answer, she felt that same strange electricity from before. "We use sentiment analysis tools combined with focus group feedback," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "But honestly, Mr. Morgan, sometimes the most important connections can't be measured in spreadsheets. Sometimes you just feel them." A silence filled the room that seemed to stretch longer than it should have. Elias held her gaze, and for a moment, Amara forgot there were 10 other people watching this exchange. "That's an interesting perspective," he said finally, making a note in his leather-bound journal. The meeting concluded with the usual shuffle of papers and mumblings about next steps. As people filed out, Amara gathered her materials, her mind already shifting to the 3 other projects waiting on her desk. She had learned long ago to keep her head down, do excellent work, and let her ideas speak louder than her voice. Amara, the sound of her first name, spoken in Elias's deep voice, made her look up. The conference room was empty except for the 2 of them. "Yes, Mr. Morgan?" He stood at the window, his back to her, hands clasped behind him as he gazed out at the Chicago skyline. "That presentation, it was exactly what we needed. Thank you, sir." He turned then, and something in his expression made her breath catch. It wasn't the face of a CEO delivering standard praise. It was the face of a man struggling with something he couldn't quite name. "I'd like to discuss some additional ideas with you. Perhaps we could—" He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Perhaps we could schedule some time to explore those concepts further." Amara nodded, professional as always. "Of course. I'll have my assistant coordinate with yours." But as she walked toward the door, his voice stopped her once more. "Amara," again her first name, "good work today." She turned back to thank him, but the way he was looking at her made the words die in her throat. It was the same intense gaze from during the presentation, but now in the empty room with sunlight streaming across his face, it felt dangerous. "Thank you, Mr. Morgan," she managed, and quickly left the room. As she walked down the hallway toward her office, Amara couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had just changed. She had spent 8 months in this building, in this job, invisible in the best possible way. But today, for the first time, she felt like someone was truly seeing her, and that terrified her more than she cared to admit. Have you ever felt someone's eyes on you in a way that changes everything? That moment, when a simple look becomes something you can't ignore, even when you know you should. Amara just experienced that electric connection with her CEO, but was it real or just her imagination? And more importantly, when someone that powerful starts to notice you, is it a dream come true or the beginning of something dangerous? What would you do if you caught your boss looking at you like that? Would you run, or would you stay to see what happens next? 3 days passed, and Amara couldn't stop replaying that moment in the conference room. She sat at her desk on the 29th floor, surrounded by mood boards and campaign sketches, but her mind kept drifting to the way Elias had said her name. Not Lewis or Ms. Lewis like he addressed everyone else, but Amara, soft, deliberate, like he was testing how it felt on his tongue. "Girl, you're staring at that computer screen like it owes you money," came a familiar voice from behind her. Amara spun around to find Kendra Washington, her closest friend at the company, holding 2 steaming cups of coffee from the break room. Kendra worked in HR and had been Amara's first real connection when she'd moved to Chicago, a lifeline in a city where everything felt foreign and intimidating. "Just thinking through this new client brief," Amara lied, accepting the coffee gratefully. Kendra raised an eyebrow, her sharp intuition cutting through the excuse like a blade. "Uh-huh. And does this client brief happen to be 6'2" with expensive suits and a corner office? What are you talking about?" Amara's voice came out higher than intended. "Honey, I've been watching office dynamics for 5 years. I know when someone's been noticed." Kendra leaned against Amara's desk, lowering her voice. "Word is that Mr. Morgan has been asking about your project load. Personally asking. Not through his assistant, not through department heads. Directly." Amara's stomach fluttered. "That doesn't mean anything. He's probably just what? Taking a sudden interest in mid-level marketing strategies?" Kendra shook her head, a knowing smile playing at her lips. "Sugar, that man has never asked about anyone's workload unless he was about to fire them or promote them. And you don't look like you're getting fired." Before Amara could respond, her computer chimed with a new email. The sender's name made her pulse quicken. E. Morgan. Subject: Project Discussion, Confidential. "Ms. Lewis, I'd like to discuss some strategic opportunities that may align with your creative vision. Would you be available for a working dinner tomorrow evening? I have some ideas that require discretion and focused attention. Please confirm your availability. E. Morgan, CEO, Meridian Digital Solutions." Amara read the email twice, her heart hammering against her ribs. A working dinner, alone, with Elias Morgan. "What is it?" Kendra asked, noticing the change in Amara's expression. "Nothing, just..." Amara minimized the email window. "Just another project request." But even as she said it, she knew this wasn't just another project. The way he'd written discretion and focused attention, those weren't typical corporate buzzwords. They felt intentional, weighted with meaning. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Amara found herself checking the email repeatedly, analyzing every word choice, every punctuation mark. By 6 o'clock, most of the office had emptied out, leaving behind the familiar hum of cleaning crews and security guards making their rounds. She was gathering her things when she noticed a light still on in the executive floor's corner office. Through the glass walls, she could see Elias at his desk, jacket removed, sleeves rolled up to his forearms as he reviewed documents. Something about seeing him in that unguarded moment, less CEO, more human, made her breath catch. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up. Their eyes met across 30 feet of office space and glass barriers, and for a moment, time seemed suspended. He didn't wave or nod or give any professional acknowledgement. He simply looked at her with that same intense focus from the conference room. Then his phone rang, breaking the spell. He answered it without breaking eye contact. and Amara quickly gathered her purse and headed for the elevator. That night, in her small apartment in Lincoln Park, Amara stared at her laptop screen. The cursor blinked in the reply box, waiting for her decision. "Mr. Morgan, I would be happy to discuss the strategic opportunities you mentioned. Tomorrow evening works well for me. Thank you for considering me for this project. Best regards, Amara Lewis." She read it over 5 times before hitting send. The response came back within 10 minutes. "Amara, excellent. I'll send details shortly. Looking forward to our discussion. E. Just E. Not Mr. Morgan or E. Morgan." The informality felt like a door opening, just a crack. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Riva Restaurant, 7:30 p.m. Ask for the Morgan reservation." Elias Amara Googled the restaurant immediately. Riva was an intimate Italian place in Navy Pier, known for its secluded booths and stunning lake views. Not the kind of place where business dinners typically happened. Corporate meetings were usually held at steakhouses downtown or hotel restaurants with conference rooms. This felt different, personal. She spent the next 20 minutes standing in her closet, holding different outfits against herself in the mirror. Professional, but not too stiff. Attractive, but not inappropriate. It was an impossible balance, and she knew it. Finally, she settled on a burgundy wrap dress that struck the right note. Elegant enough for a nice restaurant, conservative enough for a business meeting, but with a hint of something that made her feel confident and beautiful. As she hung the dress on her bedroom door for tomorrow, her reflection caught her eye in the mirror. For 8 months she had been the quiet, hard-working employee who arrived early, stayed late, and never caused waves. She had built a reputation as someone reliable, creative, and invisible. Tomorrow night she had a feeling that invisibility was about to end. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from the same number. "One more thing. Call me Elias tomorrow." The formality feels unnecessary now. Amara stared at the message until her screen went dark. When she looked up at her reflection again, she barely recognized the woman staring back at her. That woman looked excited, and that terrified her more than anything else. The burgundy dress felt like armor as Amara walked through the doors of Riva Restaurant. The hostess, a petite woman with silver hair and knowing eyes, smiled warmly when Amara mentioned the Morgan reservation. "Right this way, dear. Mr. Morgan arrived a few minutes ago." As they walked through the dimly lit restaurant, past couples sharing intimate conversations over candle-lit tables, Amara's nerves began to flutter. This was definitely not a typical business dinner venue. The soft jazz music, the warm lighting, the secluded booths overlooking Lake Michigan, everything about this place whispered romance. And then she saw him. Elias sat in a corner booth with a perfect view of the water, but his eyes weren't on the lake. They were fixed on her approach, drinking in every detail of her appearance with an intensity that made her feel both exposed and beautiful. He wore a navy blue shirt, no tie, the top button undone, more relaxed than she'd ever seen him at the office. He stood as she reached the table, and for a moment they simply looked at each other. Amara. Her name sounded different in this setting, softer somehow. "You look beautiful." The compliment hung in the air between them, clearly crossing the line from professional to personal. Amara felt heat rise in her cheeks as she slid into the booth across from him. "Thank you, Elias." Using his first name felt dangerous, intimate. "This is a lovely restaurant. I thought it might be nice to get away from the office environment," he said, signaling the waiter. "Sometimes the best conversations happen when we're not surrounded by glass walls and conference tables." A server approached, a young man with kind eyes who introduced himself as Dante. "Good evening. Can I start you both with something to drink?" "I'll have the Barolo," Elias said, then looked at Amara. "Unless you prefer something else, the sommelier here is excellent." "The Barolo sounds perfect," Amara replied, though she had no idea what that was. She was more of a white wine person, but something about this moment called for stepping outside her comfort zone. When Dante left, silence settled over their table, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was charged, electric, full of things neither of them was quite ready to say. "So," Amara began, reaching for safer ground, "what strategic opportunities did you want to discuss?" Elias's mouth curved into a slight smile, as if he knew she was deflecting. "Actually, I have a confession to make." Her heart stopped. "Oh? There is no new project." He leaned forward, his grey eyes never leaving hers. "I asked you here because I wanted to talk to you, really talk to you, away from meetings and presentations and all the noise that fills our days." Amara felt the ground shift beneath her. "Elias, I know this is unconventional," he continued, his voice low and earnest. "I know there are rules, boundaries, expectations, but I've spent the last 3 months trying to ignore the fact that every time you speak in a meeting, I find myself forgetting what everyone else is saying. Every time you walk past my office, I have to force myself not to look up from my work." The wine arrived, providing a momentary reprieve from the intensity of his confession. Dante poured the rich red liquid into their glasses, asked if they needed more time with the menu, and discreetly disappeared when he sensed the weight of their conversation. Amara took a sip of the Barolo, letting the bold flavors ground her in the moment. When she set her glass down, Elias was still watching her, waiting. "I noticed," she said quietly, the way you looked at me. I thought I was imagining it. You weren't." 2 words that changed everything. They ordered dinner, truffle risotto for her, osso buco for him, but the food became secondary to the conversation that unfolded between them. Elias told her about growing up in Michigan, the son of a factory worker who had built his company from nothing but determination and 18-hour days. Amara shared stories about Houston, about leaving everything familiar to chase a dream in Chicago, about the loneliness that sometimes crept in during long winter nights. "What made you choose Chicago?" he asked, cutting into his veal with precise movements. "Honestly, I needed to prove to myself that I could make it somewhere where nobody knew my name, my family, my history. In Houston, I was always someone's daughter, someone's friend, someone's employee. Here, I could just be me." "And who is that? Who is Amara when she's just being herself?" The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked her that before. "I don't know if I've figured that out yet. I spent so many years being who I thought I should be that I'm not sure I know who I actually am." Elias nodded, understanding flickering in his eyes. "I know that feeling. When you're in charge of other people's livelihoods, when every decision affects hundreds of employees, you start to disappear behind the role. Sometimes I look in the mirror and wonder if there's anything left of the person I used to be. What were you like before all this?" Amara gestured around them, encompassing not just the restaurant, but the life he'd built. "Reckless," he said with a laugh that seemed to surprise them both. "I used to make decisions based on what felt right, not what looked good on a spreadsheet. I used to take risks that terrified my business partners. What changed? Success, I suppose. Success makes you careful, makes you protective of what you've built." He paused, his eyes finding hers across the table. "Until tonight." The waiter refilled their wine glasses, and Amara noticed that somehow 2 hours had passed without her realizing it. The conversation flowed like the Barolo, rich, complex, intoxicating. "I should probably ask," Elias said as they finished their dessert. "Are you seeing anyone? I realize I should have asked before." "No," Amara said quickly. "No, there's no one. You?" "No, there hasn't been anyone serious in, well, longer than I care to admit." He smiled ruefully. "Turns out being a workaholic CEO isn't particularly attractive to most people. I find that hard to believe." "Do you?" The question was loaded with meaning. Before she could answer, Elias reached across the table and covered her hand with his. His skin was warm, his touch gentle, but sure. "Amara, I need you to know that I don't do this. I don't invite employees to dinner. I don't blur lines or cross boundaries. I've built my entire career on maintaining professional distance." "Then why?" "Because some things are worth the risk." His thumb brushed across her knuckles, sending electricity up her arm. "Because I've spent 3 months trying to convince myself that what I feel when I look at you is just professional admiration, and I can't pretend anymore." The silence stretched between them, loaded with possibility and danger in equal measure. "What happens now?" she whispered. Elias lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a soft kiss to her palm. The gesture was intimate, tender, and completely undid any remaining pretense that this was just dinner between colleagues. "Now," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "we decide if we're brave enough to find out." The elevator ride to the 29th floor had never felt longer. Amara clutched her coffee cup like a lifeline, replaying every moment of the previous night as the floors ticked by. The way Elias had walked her to her car, his hand warm against the small of her back. The way he'd leaned down to kiss her cheek, lingering just a moment too long, his breath warm against her ear as he whispered, "Sweet dreams, Amara." She hadn't slept at all. The elevator dinged, and she stepped into the familiar hum of office life. Everything looked exactly the same grey carpeting, the same motivational posters, the same colleagues rushing around with morning urgency. But everything felt different, like she was seeing it all through new eyes. "Look who's glowing this morning," Kendra's voice cut through her thoughts. Amara turned to find her friend standing by the coffee station, eyeing her with the sharp intuition that made her so good at her HR job. "I don't know what you're talking about," Amara replied, but she could feel the heat rising in her cheeks. Kendra fell into step beside her as they walked toward Amara's desk. "Let me guess. That project discussion went well?" Before Amara could deflect, her computer chimed with an email notification. Her heart skipped when she saw the sender, E. Morgan. Subject: "Thank you, Amara. Thank you for last night. I haven't had a conversation like that in years. Honest, real, without pretense or agenda. I hope I didn't overstep any boundaries. If you need time to process what we discussed, I understand completely. Regardless of what happens next, please know that your work speaks for itself. Your position here has nothing to do with anything personal. I respect whatever decision you make." Elias Amara read the email 3 times, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. Even in his vulnerability, he was protecting her, making sure she knew her job was secure regardless of her response to his feelings. "Girl, you're staring at that screen like it contains the meaning of life," Kendra observed. "What's got you so—" "Amara Lewis?" Both women turned to see a tall, impeccably dressed woman approaching. Her silver hair was pulled into a perfect chignon, her black suit was clearly expensive, and her smile was the kind that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm Cordelia Ashworth, head of legal affairs. Could I have a word with you privately?" Amara's stomach dropped to her shoes. Legal affairs? This couldn't be good. "Of course," Amara managed, following Cordelia to a small conference room. Cordelia closed the door and gestured for Amara to sit. "I'll cut right to the chase. There are rumors circulating about you and Mr. Morgan." "Rumors?" Amara's voice came out higher than she intended. "You were seen at Riva Restaurant last night, having what appeared to be a very intimate dinner." Cordelia's eyes were cold, calculating. "I want to be clear about something, Ms. Lewis. This company has very strict policies about fraternization between employees, especially between executives and subordinates." Amara felt like the room was spinning. "We were discussing a project." "Were you?" Cordelia pulled out a tablet and swiped to a photo. It showed Amara and Elias at their table, his hand covering hers, their faces close together in intimate conversation. "This doesn't look like a business meeting to me." Heat flooded Amara's cheeks. Someone had been watching them, photographing them. "Ms. Lewis, I'm going to give you some advice," Cordelia continued, her voice taking on a deceptively gentle tone. "Mr. Morgan is a powerful man, but he's also human. Sometimes powerful men make poor decisions, especially when it comes to attractive young employees. You seem like a smart woman, smart enough to recognize a situation that could destroy your career. What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that whatever happened last night should stay last night. Mr. Morgan will move on. Men like him always do. But you're the one who will be labeled. You're the one who will be whispered about in every meeting, every promotion opportunity. You're the one whose career will suffer." Amara's hands trembled as she processed the threat disguised as concern. "Are you saying I should quit?" "I'm saying you should be very, very careful about your next moves." Cordelia stood, smoothing her skirt. "This company is Mr. Morgan's legacy. You've been here 8 months. Who do you think they'll protect if this becomes a problem?" After Cordelia left, Amara sat alone in the conference room, staring at her reflection in the black computer screen. Everything the woman had said rang with a terrible truth. She was disposable in a way that Elias would never be. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Can we talk?" She stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Not here. Too risky." His response was immediate. "Lincoln Park Zoo, Penguin Exhibit, 1 hour." The zoo was nearly empty on a Thursday afternoon. Amara found Elias standing in front of the penguin habitat, hands in his pockets, watching the birds dive and swim with an intensity that suggested he wasn't really seeing them at all. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said when she approached. "I might have." She told him about her conversation with Cordelia, watching his expression grow darker with each detail. "Son of a bitch," he muttered. "I'm sorry, Amara. I never wanted you to be put in this position. Someone was watching us last night. They have pictures." Elias ran a hand through his hair, his composure finally cracking. "Cordelia Ashworth has been trying to manipulate company policy for years. She sees threats everywhere, enemies in every corner. Maybe she's not wrong this time." The words tasted bitter in Amara's mouth. Maybe this is too complicated, too dangerous. He turned to face her fully, his gray eyes intense. "Is that what you think? That last night was a mistake?" Amara watched a penguin dive into the crystal-clear water, disappearing beneath the surface before emerging somewhere completely different. "I think last night was the most honest conversation I've had in years. I think you made me feel seen in a way I'd forgotten was possible. But I also think she's right about one thing. If this goes badly, I'm the one who gets destroyed. You'll always be the CEO. I'll always be the woman who slept her way to the top, even if that's not what happened." Elias stepped closer, and she could smell his cologne, feel the warmth radiating from his body. "What if it doesn't go badly? What if we're careful, discreet? What if we take this slowly and see where it leads? And if someone finds out, then we deal with it together?" He reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. "Amara, I've spent my entire adult life making safe choices, calculated decisions, building walls to protect what I've created. But last night, for the first time in years, I felt alive, really alive. A family with young children passed by, the kids pressing their faces against the glass to get a better look at the penguins. Amara watched them, thinking about innocence, about taking leaps of faith without considering the consequences. "This could ruin everything," she whispered. "Or it could be the beginning of everything." He was right, and that scared her more than Cordelia's threats or office rumors or career concerns, because deep down, beneath all the fear and uncertainty, she wanted this. She wanted him. She wanted to know what it felt like to be brave, to choose love over safety, to see where this dangerous, beautiful thing between them might lead. "Okay," she said finally. "Okay? Okay. Let's be careful. Let's be discreet. Let's see where this goes." The smile that spread across his face was like sunrise after the longest night. "Really?" Instead of answering, she stood on her tiptoes and kissed him, soft and brief, there among the penguins and the families, and the afternoon light filtering through the glass. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "We're really doing this," he murmured. "We're really doing this." But even as she said it, even as happiness bloomed in her chest, Amara couldn't shake the feeling that they were diving into deep water without knowing how far down it went. 2 weeks of stolen glances and careful distance had become their new reality. At work, they were flawlessly professional. Elias addressed her as Ms. Lewis in meetings, maintained appropriate physical distance, and never let his gaze linger longer than business required. Amara responded with the same crisp professionalism, contributing ideas without seeking his particular attention, treating him exactly as she would any other executive. But underneath the polished surface, a different conversation was happening. The slight nod he gave when she made a particularly insightful point, the way his fingers drummed against his coffee cup when she spoke, the email he sent at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. "Hope your project is going well." Her response sent 3 minutes later, "Making good progress, thank you for asking." Anyone reading their correspondence would see nothing but appropriate workplace communication, but they both knew better. Their real relationship existed in the spaces between, in the text message he sent at lunch, suggesting she try the new sandwich place on Michigan Avenue, in the way she happened to take her afternoon coffee break when his meetings ended, in the careful choreography they'd developed to avoid being alone together in elevators or conference rooms. It was Kendra who finally called her out. "Okay, I can't take this anymore," her friend announced, cornering Amara by the copy machine on a Thursday afternoon. "You've been walking around here like you're starring in some kind of romantic drama, checking your phone every 5 minutes, getting that dreamy look when you think nobody's watching. What's going on?" "Nothing's going on," Amara replied automatically, but even she could hear how unconvincing she sounded, Girl, please. I've known you for 8 months. You've never been the type to get distracted by romance. You once worked through Valentine's Day without even noticing. Now you're practically glowing every time you get a text message. Before Amara could respond, her phone buzzed. Against her better judgment, she glanced at the screen. Millennium Park, Crown Fountain. 6 p.m. Need to see you. The message made her heart race and her stomach twist with anxiety in equal measure. It had been 4 days since their last real conversation, a brief exchange in the parking garage where he'd told her about a business trip to New York, and she'd mentioned working late on the Hartwell campaign. See? Kendra pointed at Amara's face. That right there. That's not your normal expression when you get work emails. It's complicated, Amara said finally. How complicated? Like, I'm dating someone and it's new complicated, or I'm dating someone I shouldn't be dating complicated. The accuracy of the second option made Amara wince. The second one. Kendra's eyes widened. Oh, honey, how shouldn't you be dating them? Married? Your boss? Your boss's boss? I can't talk about this here. Then let's go somewhere we can talk. Grab your purse. 20 minutes later, they were sitting in a corner booth at Gino's Deli, a small Italian place where nobody from Meridian would think to look for them. Amara had spent the walkover trying to figure out how much she could safely reveal. All right, spill, Kendra said, sliding a cappuccino across the table. And don't even think about giving me some watered-down version. I've seen you handle crisis campaigns and impossible deadlines without breaking a sweat. Whatever this is, it's got you rattled. Amara took a deep breath. If I tell you something, can you promise to keep it completely confidential? As in, this conversation never happened. Now you're scaring me. But yes, complete confidence. HR confidentiality, not just friend confidentiality. I'm seeing someone from work. Okay, that's not so... Wait. How high up are we talking? Very high up. Kendra's eyes went wide. Amara, please tell me you're not sleeping with Elias Morgan. The way her friend said his name, like it was a curse word, made Amara's stomach drop. We're not sleeping together. We've had dinner once, and we've talked. A lot. Oh my God, you are. You're involved with the CEO. Kendra rubbed her temples. Honey, do you understand what you're risking here? Better than anyone. Cordelia Ashworth already cornered me with veiled threats and photos from our dinner. Photos? Kendra's voice rose, then she quickly lowered it. Someone's watching you? Amara nodded miserably. I know it sounds crazy, I know it's dangerous, but Kendra, when I'm with him, I feel like myself for the first time in my adult life. Not the version of myself I think I should be, not the professional mask I wear every day, just me. Her friend was quiet for a long moment, studying Amara's face. You really care about him. I think I might be falling in love with him. The words hung between them, heavy with truth and consequence. Shit, Kendra said softly. This is really happening. I know you think I'm making a mistake. Actually, I don't. Kendra reached across the table and squeezed Amara's hand. I think you're terrified, and you should be, but I also think I've never seen you look the way you've been looking these past few weeks, like you're finally awake. So, you don't think I'm crazy? Oh, you're definitely crazy. But sometimes, crazy is the only way to get to something real. Kendra smiled. Just promise me you'll be careful, and I mean really careful. Document everything, save every communication, and for the love of God, don't give Cordelia Ashworth any more ammunition. At 6 o'clock, Amara found herself walking through Millennium Park toward Crown Fountain. The summer evening was perfect, warm but not humid, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of hot dogs and the sound of children playing in the fountain's shallow pool. She spotted Elias immediately. He was sitting on a bench facing the fountain, jacket discarded beside him, sleeves rolled up, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. When he saw her approaching, his face lit up with a smile that made her forget every worry, every risk, every reason this was complicated. Hey, he said, standing as she reached him. Hey yourself. For a moment, they just looked at each other. 2 weeks of careful distance dissolved in an instant. I missed you, he said simply. I missed you too. He gestured to the bench, and they sat with careful space between them, close enough to talk quietly, far enough apart to maintain the pretense of casual acquaintance if anyone was watching. How was New York? She asked. Profitable, but boring. I kept thinking about how much more interesting it would have been if you were there. He turned to look at her profile as she watched the fountain. "Tell me about your week." Kendra figured out I'm seeing someone. His body tensed beside her. "Did you—" I told her it was complicated and asked her to keep it confidential. She's good people, Elias. She won't say anything. What did she think? About the complication? Amara smiled despite herself. She said I looked awake for the first time since she's known me. Smart woman. His hand moved slightly on the bench, his pinky finger brushing against hers. Such a small touch, but it sent electricity through her entire body. Amara, I need you to know something. What? This isn't just attraction for me. What I feel when I'm with you, when I think about you, it's not something I can categorize or control or put in a neat little box. He paused, watching a family chase their toddler around the fountain's edge. I think I'm falling in love with you. The words hit her like a physical force. Elias, I know it's complicated. I know it's risky. I know it could end badly for both of us, but I needed you to know that this isn't casual for me. This isn't some midlife crisis or executive power trip. This is real. She turned to face him fully, forgetting about maintaining distance, forgetting about who might be watching. It's real for me too. The relief in his eyes was palpable. Really, really, and it terrifies me. Good, he said, his smile soft and private. The best things usually do. As the sun began to set behind the Chicago skyline, painting the fountain in shades of gold and pink, they sat together in comfortable silence. Just two people who had found something unexpected and precious and dangerous, holding onto it as carefully as they could. The rain hammered against the office windows as Amara worked late on the Morrison Industries campaign, the 32nd floor nearly empty except for the security guard making his rounds and the distant hum of cleaning crews. She had volunteered to stay behind when the rest of her team left at 6, partly because the deadline was tight, but mostly because she knew Elias was also working late. After 3 weeks of stolen moments and careful distance, she was learning to read his schedule, to find those small windows where they might cross paths without raising suspicion. Her phone buzzed with a text. Still there? She smiled, typing back quickly. Morrison campaign won't write itself. Need coffee? I'm making a run to that place on LaSalle. That would be amazing. 20 minutes later, Elias appeared at her cubicle, carrying 2 steaming cups and a white paper bag. He wore dark jeans and a grey Henley, his after-hours uniform, and looked younger, more approachable than his usual executive armor allowed. "1 vanilla latte with an extra shot," he said, setting the cup on her desk. "And I brought reinforcements." He opened the bag to reveal 2 chocolate croissants from Boulangerie Laurent, the expensive French bakery that definitely wasn't on LaSalle. "You went to Laurent?" Amara raised an eyebrow. "That's a 20-minute detour. I remembered you mentioning their croissants were your weakness." He pulled up a chair from the neighboring desk, sitting closer than he would during business hours. "How's the campaign coming?" "Good. I think Morrison Industries is going to love the authenticity angle we're taking." She opened her laptop screen wider so he could see the mock-ups. "Instead of focusing on their size and market dominance, we're highlighting their family ownership, their commitment to their employees, making them feel accessible despite their success." As she explained the creative direction, she became animated, gesturing with her hands, her eyes lighting up with passion for the work. Elias watched her with undisguised admiration, occasionally asking questions that showed he understood not just the business strategy, but the creative process behind it. "You're brilliant," he said when she finished. "The way your mind works, seeing connections others miss, finding the human story in corporate messaging, it's extraordinary." Heat rose in her cheeks at the praise. "It's just advertising." "No, it's not. It's empathy translated into strategy. It's understanding what people need to hear and how they need to hear it." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to that intimate tone that made her stomach flutter. "It's one of the things I fell in love with first, watching your mind work." The words hung in the air between them, more intimate than any physical touch. In the empty office, surrounded by the warm glow of desk lamps and the sound of rain against glass, it was easy to forget about corporate policies and watching eyes and professional consequences. "Elias," she whispered. He reached across the small space between their chairs, his fingers finding hers. "I know we have to be careful. I know this is complicated, but sitting here with you, talking about work and life and everything in between. This feels right in a way nothing has felt right in years. She was about to respond when the elevator chimed. They sprang apart immediately, Elias rolling his chair back to a professional distance as footsteps echoed down the hallway. Amara quickly minimized her personal email and pulled up a spreadsheet, trying to look absorbed in quarterly projections. "Ms. Lewis, Mr. Morgan?" Cordelia Ashworth's voice cut through the comfortable atmosphere like a blade. She emerged from the shadows near the elevator bank, her silver hair perfect despite the late hour, her expression unreadable. "Ms. Ashworth," Elias said smoothly, his CEO mask sliding back into place. "Working late tonight? I could ask you the same question." Her sharp eyes took in the scene. 2 coffee cups, the opened bag of pastries, the chairs positioned closer together than standard office furniture arrangements would suggest. "I was just retrieving some documents from my office when I noticed the lights still on in this section. Ms. Lewis is working on the Morrison campaign," Elias said, standing. "I stopped by to review the creative direction." "How thoughtful of you to bring coffee." Cordelia's smile was razor thin. "From Laurent, if I'm not mistaken. That's quite a distance to go for office coffee." Amara felt her throat constrict. Even innocent explanations were starting to sound suspicious under Cordelia's scrutiny. "The coffee shop downstairs was closed," Elias replied without missing a beat. "I thought Ms. Lewis might appreciate something decent if she was going to be here past 9. "Of course." Cordelia walked closer, her heels clicking against the polished floor. "Ms. Lewis, how are you finding the Morrison campaign? Challenging, I imagine." "It's going well, thank you," Amara managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "Excellent. I'm sure Mr. Morgan appreciates having such dedicated employees." The pause before dedicated was barely perceptible, but loaded with meaning. "Well, I won't keep you from your work. Mr. Morgan, don't you have that conference call with the Tokyo office at 10? "I do, actually." He gathered his jacket from the back of the chair. "Thank you for the reminder. Ms. Lewis, let me know if you need anything else for the presentation." "Of course, Mr. Morgan. Thank you for the coffee." The exchange was flawlessly professional, but Amara could feel Cordelia cataloging every interaction, every glance, every word choice for future use. After both executives left, Cordelia toward her office, Elias toward the elevator, Amara sat alone with her heart racing. The Laurent bag sat on her desk like evidence of a crime, the expensive croissants suddenly feeling dangerous. Her phone buzzed. "Are you okay, eh?" She stared at the message for a long moment before typing back, "We need to be more careful." "I know. I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry, just, we can't slip up like that again." "Agreed. Good night, Amara." "Good night." She deleted the text conversation, powered down her laptop, and gathered her things. But as she waited for the elevator, she couldn't shake the feeling that it was already too late, that Cordelia had seen something in that brief interaction that confirmed her suspicions. The elevator arrived, and as the doors closed, Amara caught her reflection in the polished steel. She looked guilty, worried, like someone with something to hide, because that's exactly what she was. On the ride down to the parking garage, she made herself a promise. No more late-night coffee runs, no more lingering conversations, no more moments that could be misinterpreted or photographed or used against them. But even as she made the resolution, she knew it would be nearly impossible to keep, because loving Elias wasn't something she could schedule or control or contain within appropriate boundaries. Love, she was learning, had its own schedule, and it didn't care about corporate policies or career consequences or silver-haired lawyers with sharp eyes and sharper intentions. The elevator reached the parking garage, and as she walked to her car, Amara realized that the most dangerous thing about their relationship wasn't the risk of getting caught. It was how natural it felt to stop pretending they were just colleagues, and how hard it was going to be to start pretending again. The meeting request arrived at 8:15 a.m. on a Monday, innocuous enough in its corporate formality. Subject: Performance Review. Confidential. Ms. Lewis, please report to Conference Room C at 10 a.m. today for a scheduled performance review. This meeting is mandatory and confidential. Legal Affairs will be present. Cordelia Ashworth, Head of Legal Affairs. Amara stared at the email, her coffee growing cold in her hands. Performance reviews weren't scheduled for another 3 months, and they certainly weren't conducted by Legal Affairs. This was something else entirely. "What's wrong?" Kendra appeared at her desk, noting the expression on Amara's face. "You look like someone just walked over your grave." "I think someone might have." Amara showed her the email. Kendra's face darkened. "Oh, honey, this isn't good. What do you think she knows?" "With Cordelia?" "Everything. She's been building a case against someone, and I'm afraid that someone is you." Kendra glanced around to make sure they weren't being overheard. "Have you and Elias been careful? Really careful?" Amara thought about the coffee run, the Laurent croissants, the way they'd been sitting so close together when Cordelia found them. "We tried to be. Trying isn't enough with her. She's like a bloodhound when she senses impropriety." Kendra squeezed her shoulder. "Whatever happens in there, remember your rights. You don't have to admit to anything, and you can request HR representation." At exactly 10 a.m., Amara knocked on the door of conference room C. "Come in." Cordelia sat at the head of the long table, a thick manila folder open in front of her. Across from her sat a man Amara didn't recognize. Mid-50s, expensive suit, the predatory stillness of someone who made his living from other people's mistakes. "Ms. Lewis, please sit." Cordelia gestured to the chair across from them. "This is Garrett Whitman from our external legal counsel. He specializes in employment law." Amara's stomach dropped. External counsel meant this was serious. Career-ending serious. "Thank you for coming," Cordelia continued, her voice taking on that deceptively pleasant tone Amara had learned to fear. "We've asked you here to discuss some concerns that have been brought to our attention regarding your conduct with Mr. Morgan." "My conduct?" Amara kept her voice steady despite the panic clawing at her chest. Cordelia opened the folder and slid a series of photographs across the table. Amara's breath caught. There she was at Riva Restaurant, Elias's hand covering hers. Another photo from Millennium Park, their heads close together in intimate conversation. A third from the parking garage after their zoo meeting, standing closer than colleagues should stand. "These were taken by a private investigator," Cordelia said matter-of-factly. "We've been monitoring your interactions with Mr. Morgan for several weeks. You've been having me followed." The violation of privacy hit Amara like a physical blow. "We've been protecting company interests." Garrett Whitman spoke for the first time, his voice cold and clinical. "When an employee begins a sexual relationship with a superior, it creates liability issues for the organization." We're not." Amara struggled to find words that wouldn't incriminate her further. "Ms. Lewis," Cordelia interrupted gently, "lying will only make this more difficult. We have documentation of multiple private meetings, personal text messages. Yes, we can subpoena phone records, and eyewitness testimony from other employees who've noticed unusual attention from Mr. Morgan." The room felt like it was spinning. They knew everything. Worse, they had evidence. "What do you want?" Amara asked finally. "We want to resolve this quietly," Garrett replied. "Sexual harassment claims, even consensual relationships that go wrong, can be very expensive for companies. Bad publicity, legal fees, settlement costs. It's much more efficient to address these situations before they become problems." "Sexual harassment? This isn't it?" Cordelia pulled out another document. "A powerful executive, a young employee, intimate dinners, expensive gifts. It's a textbook case of workplace sexual harassment, regardless of whether you believe it's consensual." "But it is consensual," Amara said desperately. "I never felt pressured or coerced." "That's irrelevant," Garrett cut her off. "The power dynamic makes true consent legally questionable. Any relationship between a CEO and a subordinate can be construed as inherently coercive." Cordelia leaned forward, her expression shifting to something that might have been sympathy if it reached her eyes. "Ms. Lewis, I'm going to be very frank with you. You have two choices." She slid a thick document across the table. "Option 1, you can sign this separation agreement. It includes a very generous severance package, 6 months' salary, excellent references, and a confidentiality clause that protects everyone involved. You'll find another job easily with your skills and our recommendation." Amara's hands trembled as she scanned the document. It was a termination agreement disguised as a voluntary resignation, complete with non-disclosure provisions that would prevent her from ever discussing her relationship with Elias or the circumstances of her departure. "What's option 2? Option 2 is that we proceed with a formal investigation. We interview other employees, subpoena your communications, conduct depositions. The investigation becomes part of your employment record. Even if you're ultimately cleared of wrongdoing, which given the evidence seems unlikely, you'll be known throughout the industry as the employee who was investigated for sleeping with her boss. The threat was clear: sign and leave quietly, or have her reputation destroyed publicly. And what happens to Mr. Morgan? Cordelia's smile was razor-sharp. Mr. Morgan is the CEO and majority shareholder of this company. His position is secure, but we'll be recommending that he complete executive training on appropriate workplace relationships. Training. While her career would be over, Elias would get a corporate seminar. This is extortion, Amara whispered. This is business, Garrett corrected. We're giving you a graceful exit from an impossible situation. Most companies wouldn't be so generous. I need time to think about this. I'm afraid not. Cordelia checked her watch. We need your decision by end of business today. If you choose not to sign, the formal investigation begins tomorrow morning. Amara stared at the document, the words blurring through tears she refused to let fall. Everything she'd worked for, everything she'd built in Chicago, reduced to a legal document and a confidentiality clause. Does he know? She asked quietly. Does Elias know about this meeting? Something flickered in Cordelia's eyes. Satisfaction, perhaps, or triumph. Mr. Morgan is aware that we've been monitoring the situation. He's chosen to let legal affairs handle it appropriately. The words hit harder than any of the threats or ultimatums. He knew they were cornering her, forcing her out, destroying her career, and he was letting it happen. I see. Amara stood on unsteady legs. I'll have my answer by 5 o'clock. Wise choice, Cordelia said. Ms. Lewis, for what it's worth, I do think you're talented. You'll land on your feet. Amara walked out of conference room C in a daze, the photographs and legal documents and thinly veiled threats swirling in her mind. In the hallway, she nearly collided with someone coming around the corner. Amara, are you... She looked up to find Elias, his face creased with concern. For a moment her heart leaped. He looked worried, caring, like the man who had brought her croissants and told her he was falling in love with her. Then she remembered Cordelia's words. Mr. Morgan is aware. He's chosen to let legal affairs handle it appropriately. I'm fine, she said, stepping around him. You don't look fine. You look... I said I'm fine. The coldness in her voice made him stop. Excuse me, Mr. Morgan. I have work to do. She walked away without looking back, but she could feel his eyes on her as she headed toward the elevator. In 5 hours, she would have to choose between signing her career death warrant or watching it burn publicly. And the man she loved, the man who claimed to love her, was going to let it happen. Amara sat in her car in the Whole Foods parking lot, staring at the separation agreement through tears she could no longer hold back. She'd driven aimlessly for an hour after leaving the office, needing space to think, to breathe, to process the impossible choice Cordelia had forced on her. Now, with 3 hours left until the deadline, she felt more lost than ever. Her phone had been buzzing constantly, missed calls and texts from Elias that she couldn't bring herself to read. How could she face him knowing he'd chosen his position over protecting her? How could she look into those gray eyes that had once made her feel so safe and see the man who'd let legal affairs destroy her career? A tap on her passenger window made her look up. Kendra stood in the rain, gesturing for her to unlock the door. How did you find me? Amara asked as her friend slid into the seat, shaking water from her coat. Find my friends app. You've been sitting here for 40 minutes. Kendra's eyes took in the legal documents scattered across Amara's lap. So they gave you the ultimatum. How did you... Honey, I work in HR. Word travels fast when legal brings in external counsel. Kendra picked up the separation agreement, scanning the first page. 6 months severance, confidentiality clause, voluntary resignation. They're really trying to make this go away quietly. What choice do I have? If I don't sign, they'll destroy my reputation. I'll never work in marketing again. And if you do sign, you lose him and your job. Amara laughed bitterly. I already lost him. Did you know he was aware of the investigation? That he chose to let legal affairs handle it appropriately? Those were Cordelia's exact words. Kendra frowned. That doesn't sound like the man who's been texting you non-stop for the past 2 hours. You don't understand? No, you don't understand. Kendra turned in her seat to face her fully. Elias Morgan didn't know about any investigation. He's been in my office for the last hour demanding to know why you won't talk to him and why Legal Affairs called an emergency meeting this morning. Amara's heart stuttered. What? Cordelia lied to you. She told you he knew and was letting it happen to make you feel abandoned, isolated? It's a classic manipulation tactic. Kendra's voice grew angry. That woman is ruthless, but she's not as smart as she thinks she is. Hope flickered in Amara's chest before reality crashed back down. It doesn't matter. Even if he didn't know, he can't protect me. They have photographs, evidence, witnesses. I'm finished either way. Are you? Or is there a third option you haven't considered? Before Amara could ask what she meant, her phone rang. Elias's name flashed on the screen. Answer it, Kendra urged. Hear what he has to say. With trembling fingers, Amara swiped to accept. Hello? Thank God. His voice was rough with emotion. Amara, where are you? I've been looking everywhere. I'm fine. No, you're not. Something happened today. Something that made you look at me like I was a stranger. Please just tell me where you are. Let me explain. There's nothing to explain. She closed her eyes, trying to keep her voice steady. Cordelia showed me the photos, Elias. The investigation, the ultimatum, all of it. And she told me you knew. Silence stretched across the line, heavy with understanding. Jesus, he breathed finally. Amara, I swear to you, I had no idea. I found out about the meeting when I saw you leaving conference room C looking devastated. I've spent the last 2 hours trying to figure out what the hell happened. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. Everything about this matters to me. His voice cracked slightly. Where are you? Please, just give me 5 minutes to explain. Kendra nudged her arm, nodding encouragingly. Against her better judgment, Amara gave him her location. 15 minutes later, a black Tesla pulled into the parking space next to her car. Elias got out in the rain without an umbrella, his usually perfect hair getting soaked as he walked around to her driver's side window. She rolled it down, and for a moment, they just looked at each other. Can I get in? He asked quietly. She unlocked the doors and he slid into the back seat, leaning forward so he could see her face. Kendra discreetly got out, giving them privacy while pretending to shop for groceries. Amara, I need you to listen to me, Elias said, his voice urgent. I had no idea Cordelia was building a case against you. None. If I had known, I would have stopped it immediately. How could you not know? You're the CEO, and Legal Affairs has the authority to conduct investigations independently. It's part of their charter, designed to prevent executive interference in HR matters. He ran his hands through his wet hair. Cordelia used that against us. She knew I couldn't monitor her actions without it looking suspicious. Amara wanted to believe him, but the pain was too fresh, too raw. She has photographs, Elias, professional investigators, text messages. She knows everything. I know, and I'm going to fix this. How? By letting me sign their agreement and disappear quietly? His jaw tightened. Is that what you think of me, that I'd sacrifice you to protect myself? What else am I supposed to think? She said you were aware. She lied. His voice was fierce, desperate. Amara, I would never let anyone hurt you, never. I'd burn this whole company down before I'd let them destroy your career. The raw emotion in his voice broke something loose in her chest. But what can you do? They have evidence. Legal says any relationship between us is inherently coercive because of the power dynamic. Legal works for me, and as of an hour ago, Cordelia Ashworth no longer does. Amara's eyes widened. You fired her. The moment I found out what she'd done, yes. Along with Garrett Whitman and anyone else involved in this witch hunt. His grey eyes blazed with anger. Nobody gets to threaten you, manipulate you, or make you feel like you have to choose between your career and your feelings. Nobody. Elias, you can't just fire people because they were doing their jobs. Their job wasn't to conduct unauthorized investigations or hire private detectives to stalk my employees. Their job wasn't to present ultimatums designed to force good people out of the company. He reached for her hand, his fingers wrapping around hers. Amara, what I feel for you isn't wrong. It's not coercive or inappropriate or any of the things they tried to make you believe. It's love. Real, honest, complicated, beautiful love. Tears spilled down her cheeks. But the company policies will be changed. I've already called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. We're going to implement new guidelines for consensual relationships between employees at different levels, disclosure protocols, ethics reviews, transfer options, whatever it takes to make this work legally and ethically. You'd do that? Change company policy? I'd do anything for you. His voice was soft now, tender. Amara, I know this has been terrifying. I know you felt alone and manipulated and betrayed, but I'm here now, and I'm going to make this right. She looked down at the separation agreement still clutched in her hands. What if the board doesn't approve the policy changes? What if they decide you were wrong to fire Cordelia? Then I'll resign as CEO and we'll start over somewhere else. Together. The quiet conviction in his words took her breath away. You'd give up everything you've built. Everything I've built means nothing without you. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her palm. I love you, Amara. Not because you work for me, not because of some power dynamic or corporate hierarchy. I love you because of who you are. Your mind, your heart, your courage, your dreams. I love you because when I'm with you, I remember who I used to be before I became just a title and a bank account. She closed her eyes, feeling the last of her walls crumble. I love you too. Even when I thought you'd betrayed me, even when I was terrified and angry and hurt, I still love you. Then don't sign that paper. Come back to work tomorrow and let's face this together. Let's show them that love isn't a liability. It's a strength. Through the rain-streaked windshield, Amara could see Kendra pretending to study organic apples while obviously watching their conversation. Her friend caught her eye and gave her a thumbs up, a grin spreading across her face. Okay, Amara said finally. Okay? Okay, I'll come back. I'll fight this with you. The relief that flooded Elias's face was like sunrise after the longest night. Really? Instead of answering, she turned in her seat and kissed him, soft and sure, and full of promises neither of them had been brave enough to make before. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. We're really doing this, he murmured. We're really doing this, she confirmed. It's not going to be easy. There will still be people who question our relationship, who think you got your position because of me. Let them think what they want. I know who I am, and I know what I've earned, and I know that what we have is worth fighting for. Outside, the rain was slowing and patches of blue sky were beginning to show through the clouds. Amara felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Not just for their relationship, but for the possibility that sometimes when you're brave enough to fight for what matters, the people you love will fight right back. The boardroom on the 34th floor had never felt more intimidating. Amara sat in the waiting area outside, her hands folded in her lap, trying to project confidence she didn't entirely feel. Through the glass walls, she could see the Meridian Digital Solutions Board of Directors filing in, 8 powerful men and women who would decide not just her future, but Elias's as well. You don't have to be nervous, Kendra said, settling into the chair beside her. As HR director, she'd been asked to present the company's position on the new relationship policies. Elias knows what he's doing. Does he? Amara watched as Elias entered the boardroom, his usual commanding presence on full display despite the storm of controversy surrounding him. He's risking everything for me. His company, his reputation, his legacy. And you're worth it. The voice came from behind them. Amara turned to see Vivienne Cross, the company's chief financial officer, and the only board member who'd ever shown her any personal attention. At 55, Vivienne was sharp as a blade and twice as elegant, with steel-grey hair and eyes that missed nothing. Ms. Cross, Amara stood quickly. I didn't expect to see you out here. I wanted to speak with you before we begin. Vivienne's expression was unreadable. Walk with me. They moved to a quiet alcove near the windows overlooking the Chicago River. Vivienne stood with her back to the glass, studying Amara with the intensity of someone conducting a job interview. 23 years ago, Vivienne began, I was a junior analyst at an investment firm in New York. I was brilliant at my job, had innovative ideas, worked 16-hour days, but I was also sleeping with my department head. Amara's breath caught, but she remained silent. When our relationship became public, do you know what happened? He was promoted to partner. I was fired for unprofessional conduct. Vivienne's smile was sharp. Different era, of course, but not so different that I don't recognize the pattern. Ms. Cross, The difference, Vivian continued, is that Elias Morgan is willing to put his money where his mouth is. Yesterday, he presented the board with a comprehensive proposal for new relationship policies, backed by legal research from 3 different firms and comparable policies from Fortune 500 companies. He's not asking us to make an exception for him. He's asking us to modernize our entire approach to workplace relationships. And what do you think of the proposal? I think it's overdue. I also think Elias is either very much in love or very much a fool. Vivian's eyes softened slightly. Based on the way he talked about you in yesterday's preliminary meeting, I'm betting on love. The boardroom door opened, and Elias appeared, scanning the waiting area until his eyes found Amara. Even across the distance, she could feel the intensity of his gaze, the quiet reassurance he was trying to send her. It's time, Vivian said. Are you ready for this? I have to be. The boardroom felt cavernous as Amara entered. 8 pairs of eyes tracked her movement to the chair Elias had pulled out for her, a small gesture of support that didn't go unnoticed by anyone present. Ladies and gentlemen, Elias began, his voice carrying the authority that had built this company from nothing, thank you for convening on such short notice. I've called this emergency meeting to address recent events concerning our company policies and to propose significant changes to how we handle consensual relationships between employees. He activated the presentation screen, displaying a detailed policy framework that must have taken his legal team all night to prepare. The current policies at Meridian Digital were written 15 years ago, based on outdated assumptions about power dynamics and workplace relationships. They fail to account for the reality of modern professional environments, where talented individuals may find personal connections that enhance rather than compromise their professional contributions. Harley Vaughan, the board's longest-serving member, leaned forward. Elias, are we really restructuring company policy because you're having an affair with an employee? The blunt question hung in the air like a challenge. Amara felt her cheeks burn, but Elias's expression remained steady. We're restructuring company policy because it's the right thing to do, he replied. But yes, my relationship with Ms. Lewis has highlighted significant flaws in our current approach. Flaws that create liability for the company and put employees in impossible positions. What kind of relationship are we talking about here? Asked Dexter Flynn, the board's youngest member at 42. A casual fling or something more serious? Elias glanced at Amara, something passing between them that felt intimate despite the formal setting. It's serious, very serious. Serious enough to risk your position as CEO? Vivian asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Yes. The single word carried the weight of absolute conviction. Around the table, board members exchanged glances, some skeptical, others intrigued. Let's hear from Ms. Lewis, said Isabella Reyes, the board's newest member. I'd like to understand her perspective on this situation. Amara's throat felt dry, but she forced herself to meet each board member's eyes as she spoke. I want to be clear about something. I never sought attention from Mr. Morgan. I came to this company to build my career based on my abilities, not my personal relationships. When we began spending time together, it was because of shared interests and genuine connection, not because of any professional advantage I thought I might gain. But surely you understand how others might perceive it, Harley said. A young employee, a powerful CEO. It looks like favoritism at best, exploitation at worst. I understand those perceptions, Amara replied. But I also understand that punishing people for finding love in the workplace doesn't eliminate workplace relationships. It just forces them underground, where they're more likely to become problematic. And what makes you think this relationship won't interfere with your professional judgment? Dexter asked. Because it hasn't so far. My work on the Morrison campaign, the Hartwell project, the Cincinnati expansion proposal, all of that was completed before Mr. Morgan and I had any personal interaction. My track record speaks for itself. Kendra cleared her throat. If I may, I've reviewed Ms. Lewis's performance evaluations, and there's been no change in quality or productivity since she began working here. If anything, her creative output has improved in recent months. Because she's been happier, Elias said quietly. Because she's been more herself. The simple honesty in his voice seemed to shift something in the room's atmosphere. Vivian leaned back in her chair. Elias, what exactly are you proposing? A comprehensive relationship policy that includes disclosure requirements, conflict of interest protocols, and transfer options when appropriate. Relationships between employees would be allowed, provided they're disclosed to HR and reviewed by an ethics committee to ensure no conflicts of interest. And in the case of you and Ms. Lewis, full disclosure, immediate ethics review, and whatever remediation the board deems appropriate. If you determine that our relationship creates unacceptable conflicts, I'll accept a transfer to our West Coast division. Amara's head snapped toward him. They'd never discussed her transferring offices, leaving everything she'd built in Chicago. Actually, she said, her voice stronger than she felt, I'd prefer to be the one to transfer, if it comes to that. Mr. Morgan built this company. It's his legacy, his vision. I'm the newer employee, and I'm willing to relocate to maintain the integrity of our professional relationship. The offer seemed to surprise everyone in the room, including Elias. That won't be necessary, Vivian said firmly. If we approve this new policy framework, there's no reason either of you should have to leave Chicago. She looked around the table, reading the faces of her fellow board members. I'd like to call for a preliminary vote, all in favor of moving forward with the proposed relationship policy. One by one, hands rose around the table. First Vivian, then Isabella, then Dexter. Harley hesitated, then raised his hand as well. By the time the count was finished, the vote was unanimous. Motion carried, Vivian announced. Elias, you have the board's approval to implement the new policies immediately. Ms. Lewis, you and Mr. Morgan will be our first case study under the new guidelines. As the meeting adjourned and board members filed out, Amara sat in stunned silence. They'd done it. They'd actually changed corporate policy, faced down the scrutiny, and won. You offered to transfer, Elias said quietly, once they were alone in the boardroom. Of course I did. This company is your life's work. You're my life's work now, too. He reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. Amara, we just changed everything. Not just for us, but for every employee who's ever had to choose between love and career advancement. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see the Chicago skyline stretching toward the horizon, full of possibility and promise. So what happens now, she asked. Now we go back to work. We build campaigns, make decisions, attend meetings, but we do it as partners, in every sense of the word. And the whispers, the people who will say I only got where I am because I'm sleeping with the boss, let them whisper. Your work will speak louder than their assumptions ever could. As they left the boardroom together, walking side by side down the hallway, where just weeks ago they'd been careful to maintain professional distance, Amara realized something had fundamentally changed. Not just in their relationship, but in her understanding of what it meant to fight for something and someone worth having. Love, she thought, wasn't just about the quiet moments and stolen kisses. It was about being willing to stand up in front of a boardroom full of powerful people and say, this matters, we matter, and we're not going to hide anymore. It was about being brave enough to change the world, even if you could only change a small part of it. 6 months later, everything had changed and nothing had changed at all. Amara sat in her newly expanded office, complete with a view of Grant Park and a title that read Senior Creative Director, reviewing the final presentation for the biggest client pitch in Meridian's history. The Castellanos Group, a multinational corporation looking to rebrand their entire identity, represented a $50 million account that could transform the company's trajectory, and they'd requested her by name. Knock, knock. Kendra appeared in her doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee and wearing a grin that had become her permanent expression since being promoted to VP of Human Resources. Ready for the big day? As ready as I'll ever be. Amara accepted the coffee gratefully, her stomach fluttering with anticipation. Any word from the Castellanos team about their arrival? Their flight landed an hour ago. Elias is picking them up personally. Kendra settled into the chair across from Amara's desk. You know, 6 months ago, I never would have imagined we'd be sitting here like this. Like what? Like 2 women who climbed the corporate ladder on their own merit in a company that actually supports workplace relationships instead of punishing them. Kendra's expression grew serious. You and Elias didn't just change your own story, Amara. You changed the culture here. Do you realize that? Through her office windows, Amara could see employees moving freely through the open concept workspace, no longer walking on eggshells around personal relationships. 3 other couples had gone through the ethics disclosure process since the new policies were implemented, and each had been evaluated fairly and allowed to continue their relationships without fear of retribution. "Sometimes I can't believe it actually worked," Amara admitted. "That we fought an entire legal department and won. You fought for love and proved it could coexist with professional excellence. The Morrison campaign alone brought in $12 million in new business. The Hartwell expansion exceeded projections by 30%. And now the Castellanos Group is specifically requesting our services because of your reputation in the industry." Amara's phone chimed with a text from Elias. "Just left O'Hare with the Castellanos team. They're impressed with the city already. T-minus 45 minutes until showtime. You've got this, I love you." The casual way he could text "I love you" now, without fear of interception or misinterpretation, still amazed her sometimes. "He's on his way back," she told Kendra. "And how are things between you two, really?" Amara considered the question. The past 6 months hadn't been without challenges. There had been whispered conversations that stopped when she entered rooms, colleagues who questioned whether her promotion was truly merit-based, and the constant pressure of being the first couple to navigate the new policies publicly. But there had also been late-night strategy sessions that turned into genuine collaborations, business trips where they could finally share hotel rooms without subterfuge, and the gradual recognition from their peers that their relationship enhanced rather than compromised their professional capabilities. "It's complicated," she said finally, "but it's real, and it's worth every difficult moment." An hour later, the main conference room was filled with nervous energy. The Castellanos Group had sent their top executives, CEO Esperanza Castellanos herself, along with her Chief Marketing Officer and VP of Global Brand Strategy. These were people who could make or break Meridian's future with a single decision. Amara stood at the front of the room, her presentation materials arranged perfectly, her team seated around the conference table. Elias sat at the far end, close enough to offer silent support, but far enough away to make it clear this was her show. "Ms. Lewis," Esperanza Castellanos spoke with a slight accent that hinted at her Colombian heritage, "we've heard remarkable things about your work. The Morrison campaign in particular caught our attention. The way you transformed their corporate image from intimidating to approachable while maintaining their authority, that's exactly the kind of thinking we need. Thank you, Ms. Castellanos. I'm excited to show you what we've developed for the Castellanos Group." The presentation that followed was the culmination of 3 months of research, creativity, and strategic thinking. Amara walked them through market analysis, creative concepts, and implementation timelines with the confidence of someone who had earned her place at the table through talent and hard work. But it was the final slide that made the room go silent. "The heart of any successful rebrand," Amara said, "is authenticity. It's about finding the truth of who you are and having the courage to share that truth with the world, even when it feels risky, even when people might judge you for it." She clicked to an image that showed the proposed new Castellanos logo, elegant, bold, unmistakably powerful yet approachable. "The Castellanos Group isn't just a corporation. You're a family business that grew into a global enterprise without losing sight of your values. Your rebrand shouldn't hide that legacy, it should celebrate it. It should say, 'We are who we are, and we're proud of it.'" When she finished, the silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then Esperanza Castellanos began to smile. "Ms. Lewis, in 30 years of business, I've rarely seen a presentation that understood our company's essence so completely." She looked around the room, making eye contact with each member of her team. "You've captured exactly what we've been trying to articulate. The contract negotiations took another hour, but the outcome was never in doubt. $50 million, with the potential for long-term partnership worth twice that amount. It was the largest deal in Meridian's history. As the Castellanos team prepared to leave, Esperanza pulled Amara aside. "I have to ask," she said quietly, "there were rumors about your relationship with Mr. Morgan when we first heard about you. Some of our competitors suggested we look elsewhere because of concerns about professionalism." Amara's heart skipped, but she kept her expression neutral. And then we saw your work. We spoke to your former clients. We researched your background and qualifications." Esperanza's smile was warm, knowing. "Miss Lewis, I've been married to my business partner for 27 years. Love and professional excellence aren't mutually exclusive. They're complementary. Anyone who suggests otherwise has never experienced both. After the clients left, the Meridian team erupted in celebration. $50 million meant job security, expansion opportunities, and validation that their company was among the industry's elite. But for Amara, the real victory was smaller and more personal. As the conference room emptied, she found herself alone with Elias. He was leaning against the windows, looking out at the Chicago skyline with an expression of quiet satisfaction. "So," she said, approaching him slowly, "how does it feel to land the biggest client in company history?" "I didn't land anything," he replied, turning to face her with eyes full of pride and love. "You did. All of it. The research, the creative concept, the presentation, the relationship building. That was entirely you. We make a good team. We make an extraordinary team." He reached for her hands, pulling her closer. "Amara, 6 months ago you asked me what would happen if we chose each other. Do you remember what I said?" She smiled, remembering that night in Millennium Park when everything felt impossible. "You said we'd figure it out together." And we did. We changed policies, shifted culture, and built something beautiful together, both personally and professionally. His voice grew serious, tender. "But I think it's time to make another choice." Her breath caught as he reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. "Elias, I know this might seem fast to some people. I know they'll say it's impulsive or romantic or any number of things that miss the point entirely." He opened the box to reveal a stunning solitaire diamond that caught the afternoon light streaming through the windows. "But I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Around them, the conference room still held the energy of their triumph. Presentation materials scattered across the table, the lingering scent of success in the air. It was a perfectly imperfect moment, business and love intertwined in a way that felt completely right. "Amara Lewis, will you marry me?" She looked into his grey eyes, the same eyes that had watched her during meetings, that had seen her potential before she saw it herself, that had looked at her with love and respect and unwavering support through every challenge they'd faced. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, laughing through tears she didn't realize were falling. "Yes, of course, yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger with hands that trembled slightly, then pulled her into a kiss that tasted like celebration and promises and the future they would build together. When they broke apart, forehead to forehead in the empty conference room where they'd just secured their company's future, Amara realized something profound. She had come to Chicago to prove she could succeed on her own terms. She had found love, fought for it, nearly lost it, and ultimately transformed not just her own life, but the lives of everyone around her. "What happens now?" she asked, echoing the question that had followed them through every major moment of their relationship. "Now we go home. We celebrate. We start planning a wedding." His smile was soft, private, full of inside jokes and shared dreams. "And on Monday, we come back to work and keep building this extraordinary life we've created together." Through the conference room windows, the Chicago skyline stretched endlessly toward the horizon, full of light and possibility and promise. They had made their choice, not between love and career, but for a life that honored both. And for the first time since arriving in this city with nothing but determination and a suitcase full of dreams, Amara Lewis felt like she was exactly where she belonged. 2 years later, the morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the new Meridian Digital Solutions headquarters, casting golden light across the bustling creative workspace. From her corner office on the 40th floor, Amara Morgan, she still smiled every time she saw her married name on documents, watched her team prepare for another day of building dreams into reality. The company had tripled in size since the Castellanos deal. What had started as a $50 million contract had evolved into a global partnership that opened doors across 3 continents. Meridian now had offices in Los Angeles, London, and São Paulo, with Amara serving as Chief Creative Officer, overseeing international campaigns. But it was the smaller changes that meant the most. The relationship disclosure policy they'd pioneered had been adopted by dozens of companies across Chicago. Harvard Business Review had published a case study about their approach, and Amara found herself speaking at conferences about workplace culture, professional ethics, and the evolution of modern corporate environments. Good morning, Mrs. Morgan. She turned to find Kendra in her doorway, now Executive Vice President of Human Resources and Employee Relations, holding 2 cups of coffee and wearing the comfortable confidence of someone who had helped reshape an entire industry. Good morning, Madame VP. How are our newest couple doing? Dante from marketing and Zara from legal. They're navigating the disclosure process like pros. It's amazing how normalized this has all become. Kendra settled into her usual chair, grinning. Remember when we used to meet in secret at Gino's Deli to discuss your impossible situation? Now we have monthly relationship wellness seminars and a mentorship program for couples managing professional partnerships. Amara shook her head in amazement. Sometimes I can't believe how far we've come. Through her office windows, she could see Elias in the conference room across the hall, leading a strategy meeting with the same intensity and vision that had first drawn her attention. At 31, she had learned to read his moods from across a crowded room, to anticipate his thoughts during presentations, to support his decisions while maintaining her own professional identity. Their marriage had been everything she'd hoped, and more challenging than she'd expected. Combining 2 ambitious careers, managing public scrutiny, and learning to be partners in every sense of the word, required constant communication and occasional compromise. But every morning when she woke up next to him, every evening when they debriefed their days over dinner, every moment when their eyes met across a conference table, she knew they had built something extraordinary. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown Chicago number. Ms. Morgan, my name is Jasmine Rivera. I work at Sterling & Associates downtown. I've been following your story for the past 2 years, and I need advice. I think I'm falling in love with my boss, and I don't know what to do. Could we talk? Amara smiled, typing back quickly. Of course, let's meet for coffee tomorrow. Lincoln Park Cafe at 2 p.m. The response was immediate. Thank you so much. You have no idea what this means to me. But Amara did know. She knew exactly what it meant to feel trapped between love and career, to believe you had to choose between personal happiness and professional success, to think you were the only person facing an impossible situation. Over the past 2 years, she'd received dozens of similar messages. Young professionals seeking advice, HR directors asking about policy implementation, executives looking to modernize their company culture. What had started as a personal journey had somehow become a movement. Another coffee meeting with a confused romantic, Kendra asked, noting Amara's expression. A young woman at Sterling & Associates. Same story, different company. You know, we could formalize this. Create a consulting division focused on workplace relationship policies and culture transformation. Amara's eyes lit up. That's actually brilliant. We could help other companies avoid the mistakes that nearly destroyed us, and help other couples avoid the heartbreak you went through. Before Amara could respond, Elias appeared in her doorway, jacket slung over his shoulder, keys in his hand. Ready for lunch? He asked, then noticed Kendra. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Actually, you're perfect timing. Kendra stood gathering her files. I just pitched Amara on a new business venture. I'll let her fill you in. After Kendra left, Elias moved to the windows, studying his wife's reflection in the glass. New business venture? A consulting division focused on workplace relationship policies. Help other companies create healthier, more inclusive cultures. She joined him at the window, their shoulders touching. What do you think? I think you're going to change the world one company at a time. He turned to face her, his gray eyes warm with pride and love. Just like you changed mine. They took the elevator down to the lobby, past the wall of awards and recognition that now included Chicago's most innovative workplace culture and Fortune's best companies for work-life balance. The security guard, an older gentleman named Murphy, who'd been with the company for 15 years, nodded as they passed. Afternoon, Mr. and Mrs. Morgan. Beautiful day out there. It is indeed, Murphy. How's your granddaughter doing at Northwestern? Dean's List again, thanks to that scholarship program you two started. Outside, Chicago hummed with its familiar energy, traffic and construction, and the endless pulse of people chasing their dreams. They walked toward the river, past the coffee shop where Elias had bought those fateful Laurent croissants, past the park where they'd shared their first real conversation about love and risk, and the courage to choose each other. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd made different choices? Amara asked as they found their usual table at the Riverside Cafe where they'd celebrated closing the Castellanos deal. All the time. But then I remember that every choice led us here, to this moment, this life, this partnership that's bigger than either of us alone. He reached across the table to take her hand, his thumb brushing over the wedding ring that had joined her engagement ring 6 months after his proposal. Do you regret any of it? The fights, the scrutiny, the complications? Amara looked around the cafe at the young professionals hunched over laptops, at the couples sharing quiet conversations, at the city she'd fallen in love with almost as completely as she'd fallen in love with the man across from her. Not one single moment, she said, even the painful parts, led to something beautiful. Her phone buzzed with another message, this one from Jasmine Rivera. Thank you again for agreeing to meet. Reading about your journey gave me hope that maybe I don't have to choose between my heart and my career. Amara showed the message to Elias, who smiled. You know what that means? He said. What? It means our story isn't just ours anymore. It belongs to everyone who needs proof that love and professional success can coexist, that fighting for what matters is worth the risk, that sometimes the most impossible situations lead to the most beautiful outcomes. As they walked back to the office, hand in hand like the married couple they'd become and the business partners they'd always been, Amara reflected on the journey that had brought them here. She had come to Chicago to prove she could succeed on her own terms. She had found love in the most unexpected place, fought for it against impossible odds, and discovered that the most profound victories weren't the ones you achieved alone. They were the ones that lifted others up in the process. Tomorrow, she would meet with Jasmine Rivera and help another young woman navigate the complex intersection of love and career. Next month, she would speak at a conference in New York about creating inclusive workplace cultures. Next year, she and Elias would expand their consulting division to help companies across the country modernize their relationship policies. But today, she was simply Amara Morgan, walking through the city she loved with the man who had taught her that the most revolutionary act wasn't choosing between love and ambition. It was refusing to accept that such a choice was necessary. Some stories end with a choice. The best ones end with the courage to change the rules entirely.